She finishes the song. It's a rehearsal, so you can talk. And I scream out, "And Bancroft!"
What if I told you that one of the greatest comedy directors of all time, Mel Brooks, has a list? Not a greatest hits, not his favorite film. No, a list of actors he absolutely hated working with. And I mean hated, in the most Mel Brooks way possible, full of chaos, comedy, and brutal, side-splitting honesty. From uncontrollable laughter on set to perfectionist rewrites, diva delays to dramatic debate. This is the list no one saw coming. But don't be fooled. This isn't about enemies. It's about the wild, hilarious, frustrating love that comes from creating comedy history with the most unforgettable performers alive. 1. Dom DeLuise, the human laugh track. Let's start with Dom DeLuise, a man so funny, he ruined nearly every take. Not because he wasn't good. No, because he couldn't stop laughing. Mel Brooks said it best. Directing Dom felt like babysitting a clown with a sugar high. Dom's sin? He laughed. A lot. And not at his own jokes, but everyone else's. Before a scene began, he'd already be chuckling. During takes, he'd fall out of his chair, cover his face, gasp for air like someone had just told him the meaning of life. Written by Groucho Marx. Mel tried everything to contain the chaos. He turned cameras away, separated Dom from other actors, especially Meline Khan and Harvey Korman. But the moment someone raised an eyebrow or cracked a grin, Dom was done. Takes ruined, crew exhausted, Mel exasperated. One day, Mel said, Dom had one line. One. But Meline Khan raised her eyebrow, and Dom lost it. He laughed for 45 minutes. We had to break for lunch. And yet, Mel never fired him. Why? Because when Dom finally did get through a take, it was gold. Pure comedy magic. Dom's spirit was infectious. He brought pasta to set, fed the crew like they were his extended Italian family, and turned filming into one giant family dinner with laughs and sauce stains. He was maddening. He was brilliant, and Mel loved him like a brother he couldn't ground. I said cut. More times with Dom than anyone else, Mel said. And half the time, he was the reason. But when the camera rolled, he made movies. Behind the scenes, Dom DeLuise wasn't just the class clown. He was the soul of the party. He didn't walk onto set, he bounced. Jokes, stories, impressions, you never knew what was coming. One day, he'd do Brando. The next, he'd sing Italian opera while stirring a pot of sauce he brought from home. He once fed 40 crew members during a night shoot, complete with garlic bread, tiramisu, and laughter so loud they had to reshoot half the evening. Mel once joked that Dom's laugh had a gravitational pull. If Dom started giggling, everyone else fell into orbit. Even the most stoic crew members cracked up. Dom had a way of looking at you like he knew the punchline of a joke you hadn't even told yet. But there was another side to Dom, a surprisingly sensitive one. He doubted himself often. He'd ruin take after take with laughter, then pull Mel aside, apologizing like a kid who broke his dad's favorite record. And Mel, though frustrated, would just sigh, pat his back, and say, "Let's go again, Dommy." And they did, over and over, until magic happened. Dom's laughter may have stalled the process, but it also lifted the mood. On the longest, hardest days, his chaos became the fuel that kept everyone going. Even when he drove Mel to the brink, he also reminded him, and everyone else, why they fell in love with comedy in the first place. He didn't just ruin scenes, he made memories, and in the end, he made the movies unforgettable. 2. Meline Khan, the genius who questioned everything. Next up, Meline Khan, one of the greatest comedic actresses of all time, and also, according to Mel, the most infuriating perfectionist to ever grace his set. Mel adored Medeline's talent, but she was picky. She didn't just perform, she dissected. Every line, every gesture, every prop, even the couch her character sat on, became a point of debate. Mel once asked her to say a line just like they rehearsed. Her reply? "I found a better way." She usually did, but it drove Mel nuts. She was late. She demanded changes. She rewrote lines. She even directed other actors mid-scene. In Blazing Saddles, her performance as Lily von Stupp is still quoted today. In Young Frankenstein, she played the spoiled fiancée, Elizabeth, with unforgettable flair. And in each film, Mel felt like he was sprinting to catch up with her vision. Working with Meline, he joked, was like wrestling a cat in a rainstorm. And yet, he kept casting her, over and over again. Why? Because when the dust settled and the cameras rolled, Meline delivered. Every scene became richer, funnier, smarter, more alive. She pushed Mel. She challenged him. She made his life harder and his films better. She didn't back down. She didn't settle. And she made sure every scene she was in was unforgettable. That's why I hated working with her, and why I'd do it all over again. What made Meline Khan so unforgettable wasn't just her talent. It was her instinct. She had a razor-sharp sense of timing that didn't come from training. It came from somewhere deeper. Mel said she could read a room and a script, like a mind reader. One glance, one breath, one eyebrow raise, and the entire set leaned in. Take Blazing Saddles, for example. Her character, Lily von Stupp, could have easily been a throwaway parody, but Meline turned her into something iconic. A sultry, exhausted cabaret singer dripping with melodrama and brilliance. The way she slurred, "I'm so tired," became an anthem of comedy. Mel admitted, that wasn't in the script. That was Meline. But that same brilliance came with friction. She'd show up late, float onto set like nothing was wrong, and then suddenly freeze production with questions about the lighting, the wardrobe, even the motivation behind a single word. There's a story from Young Frankenstein where she halted filming for over an hour because she disagreed with how a scene was blocked. The crew was losing patience. Mel was pacing. Then Meline stepped into frame, did the scene her way, and it was perfect. No one said a word. They just clapped. Even the crew, who sometimes grumbled about her diva energy, whispered among themselves, "Yeah, but she's right." Off camera, she was private, almost elusive. She wasn't one for on-set gossip or off-hours parties. But when she stepped into a scene, it was like watching someone flip a switch from ordinary to extraordinary. Mel may have fought her tooth and nail, but deep down, he knew. Meline Khan didn't just elevate her characters, she elevated the entire film. She was a storm. She was a star. And Mel never found another like her. 3. Gene Hackman, the serious actor in a not-so-serious world. Now imagine this. You're directing a zany black-and-white comedy, and Gene Hackman walks on set. Yes, that Gene Hackman. Oscar winner, drama king, intensity incarnate. It was like trying to play jazz with someone reading from a classical score, Mel said. Gene only worked with Mel once, playing the blind hermit in Young Frankenstein. The scene is legendary. Hackman, as the kind-hearted but clumsy recluse, unknowingly tortures Frankenstein's monster with hot soup, flaming fingers, and a wild cigar. It's slapstick heaven. But behind the scenes, pure oil and water. Hackman came from the world of deeply rehearsed theater and dramatic cinema. He was trained, studied, disciplined. Every gesture was planned. Every line was deliberate. When he stepped onto Mel Brooks's set, a place fueled by improvisation, instinct, and barely contained chaos, he looked like a man trying to read Tolstoy at a food fight. Mel would shout, "Let's try it looser." Hackman would respond, "What's the exact motivation here?" He wanted more rehearsal time, more structure. Mel wanted to roll the camera and see what happened. One scene, Hackman spent 20 minutes perfecting the way he poured soup. Mel, meanwhile, was trying not to laugh as Peter Boyle, the monster, nearly burned his fake thumb off between takes. And yet, Despite all the friction, something incredible happened. Hackman's seriousness made the comedy funnier. His deadpan delivery was so sincere, so grounded, that it amplified the absurdity around him. Audiences howled. They still do. Mel later revealed that Hackman joined the cast as a personal favor. Not to him, but to Gene Wilder. Hackman was itching to try comedy and asked Wilder if there was a part for him. Mel was stunned. Gene Hackman wants to be in this? But he said yes, and never looked back. Even though they never worked together again, Mel always respected Hackman's performance. He called it a controlled detonation of comedy, carefully calculated, yet explosively funny. Hackman didn't laugh. He didn't play around. But when the camera rolled, he crushed it. Sometimes, Mel said, the best comedy comes not from goofiness, but from someone taking absolute nonsense completely seriously. And that was Gene Hackman. Gene didn't laugh between takes. He didn't break character. He didn't like chaos. And every time someone goofed up a line, Hackman would shoot a look that screamed, "Why are we even doing this?" But when the cameras rolled, Gene nailed it. His comedic timing was perfect. The slapstick was on point. The pathos, real. The result was gold, Mel admitted. But it felt like mining for diamonds with a toothpick. They never worked together again. Not out of hate, but because they lived on different planets. Gene needed control. Mel thrived on chaos. But man, Mel said, that one scene proves that sometimes comedy is born out of tension. 4. Chloris Leechman, the force of nature. Chloris Leechman wasn't just an actress. She was a storm, and Mel Brooks loved and feared her for it. They worked together on Young Frankenstein, High Anxiety, and History of the World, Part 1. Every time, Chloris brought power. She also brought questions, endless questions. Mel once said, "Directing Chloris was like riding a wild horse, bareback, through a thunderstorm, blindfolded. She refused to just take direction. She challenged direction. If Mel gave her a note, she asked why. If he insisted, she tried it her way instead. Most of the time, her way worked. In Young Frankenstein, she played Frau Blücher. One stare, one-line delivery, and audiences howled. But behind that stare was a woman who argued about tone, character motivation, even lighting. In High Anxiety, she wanted control. Mel wanted chaos. She wanted structure. Mel wanted silliness. They debated constantly, not out of ego, but out of belief. Chloris believed in the truth of her characters. She wanted depth, even in slapstick. She'd have played her part in total silence, Mel joked, if she thought it served the scene better. Chloris didn't chase applause. She chased authenticity. That's what made her exhausting and unforgettable. She made me justify every decision, every line, every camera angle, and damn it, she made the scenes better. Chloris Leechman was not the kind of actress who showed up, said her lines, and waited for praise. She was surgical. She dissected characters the way a scientist studies cells, relentlessly, curiously, and with absolute commitment. During Young Frankenstein, where she played the eerie housekeeper Frau Blücher, cue horse neighing, she debated with Mel for hours over the tone of a single scene. He wanted it light, campy, funny. She wanted it grounded, truthfully weird, not just goofy. She saw layers that no one else even looked for. Chloris, Mel once said, could find emotional trauma in a cream pie gag, and she wasn't afraid to challenge anyone, not even the script. If she felt a line didn't belong, she'd pause rehearsal and ask, why would she say this? If no one had a good answer, she'd rewrite it on the spot. And more often than not, her version worked better. On the set of High Anxiety, she played Nurse Diesel, a role dripping with parody. But Chloris approached it like Shakespeare. She studied power dynamics, motives, and backstory, even if the audience never saw it. For her, Comedy without meaning wasn't worth doing. Mel joked that she made every scene feel like a thesis defense. Yet, for all the stress she caused, Mel couldn't help but admire her. Even after the longest shoot days, when he collapsed from creative exhaustion, he knew Chloris had squeezed the very best from the material. She never took the easy route. She never phoned it in. She made people uncomfortable. She made people think. And she made comedy that lasted generations. That's why Mel kept casting her, even when she wore him down. Because in the end, Chloris Leechman didn't just elevate the characters. She elevated the entire art form. 5. Richard Pryor, the genius who got away. Here's the heartbreak. Mel Brooks wanted Richard Pryor to star in Blazing Saddles. He wrote the role of Bart for him, the black sheriff who upends a racist town. But the studio said no. They were afraid. Richard had a history. He was unpredictable. He had substance problems. He missed meetings, showed up late, or not at all. Mel fought for him. He begged the studio to trust Richard. He gave the movie its soul, Mel said. The edge, the honesty, the guts. Richard co-wrote the script. His fingerprints were everywhere. He infused every scene with raw, unapologetic humor. But ultimately, Mel had to recast the lead with Stephen Little, who did an outstanding job. Still, Mel never stopped wondering what the film would have been like with Richard on screen. Working with Richard was like waiting for lightning. You couldn't control it, but when it struck, it was unforgettable. They remained friends. Mel never held a grudge. He loved Richard, not just for his genius, but for his bravery, for the fire he brought to every line. He didn't make the movie, Mel said, but he made the movie matter. Behind the scenes, Richard Pryor was more than a co-writer. He was a catalyst. The entire tone of Blazing Saddles shifted when Richard entered the writing room. The film was originally a standard Western parody, but Richard injected it with edge, with danger, with truth. He tore through the script with a fire that only comes from lived experience. It was Richard who pushed for the raw language, the N-word. That was Richard. The jokes that tiptoed on the edge of cancellation? Richard. He understood that real satire doesn't flinch. He made sure the racism in the film wasn't polished or safe. It was ugly, absurd, and brutally honest. Because that's what made the comedy work. Mel recalled moments in the writer's room when Richard would just go quiet, completely still. The others would be riffing, laughing, arguing. Then Richard would speak. One line, one razor-sharp observation, and the room would freeze. That line usually made the final cut, but he was unpredictable. Some days, he wouldn't show. Other days, he'd arrive 2 hours late, scribbling new ideas on napkins. He lived on the edge. Genius and chaos bundled into one brilliant, volatile soul. The studio feared that volatility. They didn't want the risk. Mel understood, but he never stopped regretting it. Richard wasn't just another actor, Mel once said. He was the voice of the movie's soul. You could feel him in every scene, even if you didn't see his face. And that's why Blazing Saddles still feels dangerous, still feels fresh, because Richard Pryor's fingerprints are on every frame. He wasn't the sheriff, but he was the revolution behind the badge. Anne Bancroft, the woman who challenged everything. And finally, Anne Bancroft, Mel's wife, his partner, his greatest muse, and according to him, the hardest actress he ever worked with. Starred together in To Be or Not to Be. Let's just say sparks flew, on and off camera. Anne wasn't just talented, she was fearless. She didn't treat Mel like a director. She treated him like an equal, which meant she argued a lot. If a line didn't work, she said so. Mel gave vague direction. She crossed her arms and demanded specifics. Said she was the only actress who made him second-guess every note he gave. Their arguments weren't mean, but they were intense. The crew learned to step back when the Bancrofts went head-to-head, but on screen, magic. Anne's performance was sharp, elegant. emotional, brought gravity to comedy, and honesty to absurdity. And after filming, they went home, had tea, and laughed about it all. That's love. That's art. She broke me, Mel said. She made me better. Every single time. So, did Mel Brooks really hate these actors? Not even close. This list isn't about hate. It's about the price of greatness. These actors pushed Mel to the edge. They argued. They made him wait. They made him question himself. In doing so, Mel said, they made the movies. Dom's laughter, Madeline's brilliance, Jean's intensity, Chloris's tenacity, Richard's fire, Anne's fearless honesty. They made Mel Brooks's career legendary. So when Mel says he hated working with them, what he means is, they frustrated me, they challenged me, they exhausted me, but they made me laugh, cry, and create the best work of my life. And that's not hate. It's the kind of chaotic love that built comedy history. Which actor surprised you the most? Who would you love to see Mel work with today? Even at 98, drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and pray you never ruin a take on Mel Brooks's set. He never forgets.